I never thought I would be making games at first. I was studied in movies, literature, theater, and that was my gang, my group of friends. Were all in arts in general, but I was making movies back in college in 93, 94, 95-ish. And then suddenly in 97, Ubisoft arrived in Montreal, and I applied, basically. And then Videogames picked me more than I picked the video games. But I was a gamer since I was 6. My dad was a mathematician or teacher, math teacher in a college, but not university. In Quebec, we have like this school in between high school and university called a college, and so there was machines around in the house, because when you're in math back then in the 70s and early 80s, well, you love computers, and my dad master was on binary logic. So he was one of the early adopter of any computers. And so I had one at home when I was 5 and 6, and I started to play really at the early age. I started with Load Runner and Choplifter on an Apple II. And then eventually the Nest came around in 85, and I never actually stopped since. Well, it's not true. I stopped for 4 or 5 years, college years, where back in the days you could not say to a girl that you played video games. You had no chance in life or in your love life. And so and eventually, after college, I quit for college basically after 3 years without the diploma, and because you don't learn to make movies in school. You actually just go out there and you take your camera and you shoot stuff, right? And so that was my thought process, and Ubisoft arrived in '97, and I applied, like I said, and but I was a cocky 23-year-old guy who, when we did the interview, they asked me, okay, do you want to do the interview on script writing? Because I said I was a script writer, or on game design. And so cocky like I was, I said, well, I could be a script writer for movies or TV, but, game design is only for you, Ubisoft, so I'll do the interview on game design. Never, actually did any game design in my life except some levels here and there. And then we talked for almost an hour, and I used the term gameplay for the first time, and I was like, oh God, I think I got something. I remember we talked about Mario Kart and how the drifting gameplay is really important, and how also you get the power-ups if you're in the back, so it helps you go in front and whatnot. And it's been 18 years now. I've never actually stopped make video games since then, and I was already a game designer when I started. And I was the very first employee back in '97, Ubisoft Montreal employee, not the very first video game employee. And never looked back. And I loved video games. Often people asking me, why don't you do something else, like a book or a movie? And I'm like, no, the interactivity part of video games is really important. This is how I think. Now, this is how a flow of a game is different than a movie or a TV series, and for me it's fun. And I think with I think my ideas and games with the controller in my head, and I can not only tell a story without that part. It's really important for me, the part of having fun with a controller, and so that's why games.